Welcome to episode 2 of Learn With Me. I assume you've watched episode 1 or at least have Fusion 360 downloaded and installed on your computer if you are on episode 2. Or if you don't, I would recommend doing that because that is what we are looking at in this episode. So I'm going to basically just break down a couple key things to know where they're at to see in Fusion 360. And that will be pretty much what episode 2 covers. So the very first thing to find and see is your file. You want to be able to, if you're familiar with Windows or Microsoft Office and Excel and all that, you're familiar with file, save, file, whatever, export, import. That is what this little sheet of paper up here is basically the file tab. You can do a new design from here. You can open another design that you have on your desktop or save somewhere. You can save as, export, and all that stuff's going to come in handy whenever we decide to send a file to our slicer software, Cura, or whatever slicer software you use. Get into that later. The disk button here, by the way, this is a floppy disk. For all of those who don't know what that is, it's a floppy disk. Old school. Hit that to save it anywhere you're at in your project. Go ahead and save with that button there. The next thing to point out is the different menus. In Fusion 360, you've got solid, surface, mesh, sheet metal, plastic, utilities. All these bring up different sub-menus. I'm going to start this episode with solid. This has the sub-menu, the create, modify, assemble, construct, inspect, insert, select. Over here to your left, you've got a browser of all the objects and sketches, and basically anything you create and was created in your project will be over here on the left. And we'll get into that a little further once we start making things. To the right, you've got a cube-looking guy here, and this is pretty neat. This kind of shows you where you're at in your 3D space, what you're viewing. Because we have nothing on the screen right now, it's hard to tell and orient yourself with where you're at. So that's what this cube is for here. And if you ever lose your way or get too wonky out of place or wherever, you can always hover over this and a little house will come up. Click on that little house and it'll bring you right back to your original starting point. That I use frequently because you'll see once you start moving around this 3D space and creating things that sometimes you can lose track of where you're at. So if you have a face selected, you can also hit these little arrow buttons to turn it 90 degrees. And what I mean by a face selected, like this corner is not a face. This corner is like two faces, half of the top and half of the front face. So there's no arrows over here to flip. But when you select a full-on face view, it'll allow you to flip that left and right 90 degrees. Down across the bottom, a very important part is a timeline of everything that every step that you have completed will be down across the bottom. And just to give you an idea here, I'm going to start with a sketch, just something basic, just to get some stuff populated here and be able to talk you through it. So I'm going to start with a sketch, and initially the first thing you want to do is pick your plane that you're going to start working with, and I typically like to work my way from the bottom of the project up, but depending on what I'm doing, I may change what plane I start with. But for this one, because most of the time I start from the bottom up, I'm going to select the top view down, that plane, the bottom plane basically. And I'm just going to create a quick, here we go, just a quick square. Doesn't really matter. I don't know why I'm being so crazy. Okay, so it doesn't matter how big it is. Just wanted a quick square. And I'll put a little one inside of it, just to give you some idea of what I'm doing here. So when you're finished with your sketch, when you're finished with your step that you're on, there's typically a finish or some kind of a button that tells it to process what you just entered in. So this is finish sketch, a little green arrow, or you can hit this finish sketch down here. And now we've got this. I am using a Microsoft Surface Pro 8. So in one hand, I use a trackball mouse, and in the other hand, I basically use to manipulate the screen. So I'm actually touching the screen here to move this around. And you see I can move my mouse too with my right hand. My left hand is maneuvering the 3D space image. So if you look down here on the bottom, you'll see that I have completed two, well, really it was just one sketch. The other one I think I had in there before I started the video. But I basically have a sketch. Okay, awesome. That is in my timeline right now. The sketch I did prior to that, there should be nothing in there. So there's nothing highlighted. Nothing was in there. I could probably delete that and get away with it. We're going to leave it in there because whatever. Not a big deal. So viewing this here, also to your right here in this browser, you will see your sketches. There's no bodies or anything else in there. All this is pre-populated. Your origins. This comes with every new sketch you do, every new project you do. It has to have this stuff in there. So I don't ever pay attention to any of that. But since I have sketches, it's going to give me my sketches. If I don't want to see the sketch anymore, I'm going to hit this little eyeball, and it'll have a little line through it that takes it away. Can't see it. And just to add some info here, add some depth to it, I'm going to extrude this. When you select something, it's going to highlight in blue. And you can hit extrude here or create extrude. It's nice that they put it right there. Extrude this up just to give some depth. And we're going to cover extrusions in the next episode, one of the next episodes. Again, maneuvering my 3D space. But what's cool is down here on the timeline is we have an extrusion. Now let's say that I made a mistake and I went up too high or I didn't go up high enough. I can double click this step and add to the extrusion, take away from the extrusion, hit OK, and it's now changed in the timeline. Also up here in the corner, I added a body. I added bodies to this. So now I can see the body. And I can see the sketch still if I have that highlighted. I can take away the body if I want to do something else without seeing that body in there. My recommendation is you can change stuff on this. Always use your timeline to either delete or modify those steps, but use this up here to make things visible or invisible, and that's going to play a key part in some of your designs, is being able to make things visible and not visible. We'll get into that stuff later. This is your basic layout of how to start a project in Fusion 360, and there's a lot of other little tabs here that I'm still getting familiar with too. And we're going to cover a lot of these in the next few episodes. So stay tuned for episode number 3, Fusion 360 Learn With Me. And if you haven't yet, you can check out my Design With Me series. I basically cover a new project every week. New videos, new projects are posted every Thursday. Please subscribe to my channel for all new content to be alerted when new content is posted. And as always, I appreciate it. See ya.